Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Lawless Podcast. And today we're joined by...
I'm Iori, honoured to be here.
Thank you, man. And yeah, if you'd just like to tell us a little bit about yourself and yeah.
Okay, so Alex has finally roped me into doing this. It's been a while and it's taken a bit of prodding and coaxing, but I'm finally here and in a hallowed, illustrious crowd of other names such as Archie Saint.
Other big names.
So I've got a lot to live up to, but I'm here to, give a little opening discussion into the field of maybe mental health. We might be going into like chronic illness and a bunch of topics which we're hopefully going to explore today, with the main aim of just sort of normalizing the discussion around these things and showing that the hurdles of sort of stigma and shame don't really need to exist anymore. I think if we approach it in like an open-minded and candid way.
No, definitely. I think a really big thing is just trying to show people that they're not alone and the issues they're facing they may think are unique to them, but in reality there are a lot of more people suffering from the same sorts of stuff.
Yeah, 100%. And I think lockdown's really shone a light on that the need for companionship and coming together and expressing ideas as a group have never been so important. And I think having this opportunity now that we're all under one roof is quite exciting, and it's something that I hope we'll explore today.
Exactly. So just to talk a little bit about you and kind of your background. So you're from Wales, aren't you?
That is true, from the mountains. I'm from North Wales. And I guess I'd be classed as a mature student, even though I'm 24, so I don't feel too old yet, but hanging around with you 18-year-olds is starting to make feel my age a little bit. Already been nominated the honorary granddad of the group, but so I've approached university at a slightly later stage in my life, and I think some of that is linked to the health problems I've had over the years, not being able to complete my A-levels exactly when I wanted to, but that's something we can go into and happy to talk more about.
Exactly. So what's it been like coming to university as a mature student?
I think initially I was pretty apprehensive. I think there's a question mark over whether you'll fit in, but I think that extends to everyone really. But I think as soon as you get to know people and you share some of your insecurities, share some of your vulnerabilities, and they do the same sort of thing, it's sort of proven to be a remarkably warm experience and a very welcoming experience. So far, I think I guess it's a month now. It's gone by so quickly.
Honestly.
Yeah, it's been great. It's been really nice, and we've done a very diverse set of things. Got some good memories under the belt. It's been everything I was hoping for out of university, and like everything I expected as an 18-year-old when I was thinking about going to university. It just shows you it's never too late,
No, exactly, man. And you see people even, a lot older than yourself going to university.
That's true.
And it just shows to people that if you are apprehensive as an older student of coming, what would your advice be to another person who's looking to go to university as a mature student? I
just think education is for everyone. It's universal. I think there should be no imposed age limits. And you'll surprise yourself by how I've been out of the system for 5-6 years, but once those gears start churning again, you really you can get into it quite quickly. And I think the human ability to adapt to foreign situations and the unfamiliar is pretty remarkable. So I think, if you fully appreciate it in a sort of open-minded way, I think you can get back into education quite easily.
Nice, man. So would you like to just tell us a little bit about the mountains?
The mountains? Yeah. Oh, that's a nice topic. Yeah, that's a good place to start. I live up in the Snowdonian Mountains. I've been living in the same sort of cottage for, my whole life really. So my parents bought the house just before I was born. It's like an old Welsh longhouse, really, really thick stone walls and kind of built for hobbits, which is not fantastic when you're a 6'4" guy. Hence, banging my head a lot as a kid, smacking my head on the things. But I think the benefits of the house is the garden that's attached to it, and that's been a massive boon over lockdown, having that bit of nature to explore and get into, and you sort of feel, particularly where I live, I feel very immersed and connected to the landscape around me. So I think my lockdown experience, unlike a lot of people, which if you were crowded into a city, I'm so sorry, that must have been really tough. I think I've had the benefits of being in the countryside and being able to explore some of the places that I love and really cherish. Which is also why I think coming to Durham is quite a nice step, because it is fairly comparable. It's not too big. We've got good access to the mountains, the countryside. So it's been a nice transition for me. And I think if you are a mature student, finding ways to ease that transition over are pretty crucial. Like, you don't have to think your lifestyle is going to change completely. You can try and adapt to something that's a bit more familiar. I think that's important.
No, exactly. I think I found as well is like superimposing the habits you already had at home and then doing them here. So like for me, doing the meditation, doing the running, just keeping them old habits going is a really good like sort of coping mechanism, because it means that you can just keep that sort of normality and ability to smooth things over, especially in that transition period as well.
Yeah, 100%. And particularly, it's a good time to focus on those really healthy habits as well, and try and eliminate some of the less so healthy ones, which you can leave those behind at home. It's a time of reinvention, but also a time of development and building on, I guess, the foundations that you established as you were a teenager or from back home. So I think that's the exciting thing about university, is that chance to prove transformative. And even I know obviously we're early days, we're speaking quite naively about this, but I feel like I've already learned quite a lot. Definitely learned how much alcohol I can consume in one night. That's been it's quite an education.
No, of course, man. Yeah. I think that is such a crucial point, is leaving behind old things. And I read something today, it's like life, it sounds a bit dark, but saying life is all about death, but it's like death of old habits and old things you want to get rid of as you evolve. So it's like, I'm leaving this habit behind, I'm leaving this sort of thought process that was not helpful behind.
Yeah.
And I'm therefore moving on and going into something that's going to help me develop more. Yeah. And on the topic of like development, other than your studies, what other stuff have you done at Durham so far?
Well, that's implying I've done a bit of studying. I've done a very minimal amount of studying. I've done a little bit, enough. I think the societies have been amazing so far. Like, the chance just to meet people who are sort of united by a common interest in something. Highlight of my week is usually the folk night, where we just sort of get a bit blurry in a pub and play together as a group. Really is that sense of community I've been missing during lockdown from just playing instruments on my own in my room. I've found that immediately, and the community that supports that has been wonderful. So yeah, there's like anything from I've tried to approach the societies as a chance to do something new, and everything that I've taken up so far has been something that North Wales has never really offered. It offers a lot in terms of outdoor recreation, but it doesn't offer a lot in terms of diversity of activities. So I've been doing like gamelan, which is a type of Indonesian folk music, a folk society, kendo, which is quite good. And like you were saying earlier, that has an element of meditation and discipline to it as well. So I think it's important, even with the activities and societies you do, you bring those important lessons into them. And it's making my week feel pretty diverse and exciting.
Exactly, man. I think that is the thing as well. You just got to keep them exciting things going. The things you can go, I'm really looking forward to doing that, and then it gives you something to you've done your study. Here's your reward now. You can do this cool thing. Obviously, you got to kind of find the good in the study as well, and pursue your own interests.
Yes, definitely. Tailor your reading. Whether you're doing a humanities subject, there's a lot of reading. Tailor your reading to something that interests you, and you can always sort of chase these avenues of thought down a certain path. I can't really speak for sort of STEM subjects, but I think they're given enough direction that they're kind of pushed in the right way. I think there's a lot of burden on you if you are taking a big reading heavy course to get through all the material. I think some advice I've been given so far is just to really distill it down to things that hold your attention and your fancy. And there's always a chance to explore those later and as your degree progresses, I think.
Exactly. It's like with a lot of academic texts, they always have an abstract, an introduction, and a conclusion, or some of them even have sort of summary paragraphs. So it's very helpful if you just want a quick overview to just look at them and just take the key points out. Because in any sort of literature, all you're really trying to gain from it is, what are the key points? What's the author trying to say to me? And what can I really, what can I take from this that's relevant to this topic or module?
Yeah. What sort of lessons would you say that you've taken away from these first couple of weeks at uni? Have you learned anything interesting about yourself that you didn't know beforehand, or anything like that?
Yeah, I think I've learned quite a lot, mate. I think one of the key lessons would have to be the sort of delayed gratification, and the fact that you can go, okay, I know that in the moment this isn't the best, but I know long term this is going to help me. And obviously there's vice versa with that. I know in the moment this thing's good, but then you're like, oh, this is not actually the best for me, and this is not the the thing that's going to help me in the long term.
I think that's a really nice point. Yeah, that's great. I think it is important that you have to really invest in your future when you're at this sort of stage. It is quite easy to rest on comforting things like going out every night and getting smashed, or doing those instant gratification things. But I think you do learn. Actually, don't know where I'm going with this one. Could that be like?
Yeah, no, we'll sort that out, mate. Yeah.
Cool.
But yeah, so just going to something different. Obviously, you're quite big on your music.
Yeah.
So, what would you say like the power or role of music is in society at the moment?
That is a good question, and I think I wrote an essay about this over the summer, well, just before the summer began, and it was what kind of brought me onto this area of music called musical ethnography, which is now a module I'm trying to study. I think it's I don't think there's a way you can answer that in a very sort of pithy one-line sentence sort of thing, but I think historically people have said that music is a universal language that binds us together, and I think some of that rings true. There is definitely a sense of community and togetherness that you can get through music more than anything else I've ever experienced. But I just think it facilitates, I guess, a conversation and a way of expressing life that's, I think, more vivid and colourful than everyday interactions. I think if you can appreciate music together as a group or as two individuals, there's something sort of bonding about that, unifying, that I don't know, I think it's very uniquely human. I think sharing music together is one of the most special things you can do, and not having that opportunity in lockdown has been pretty hard. I think we were talking about my illnesses earlier, and I was trying to think of a common thread that united those periods of me recovering, because I've had some issues with my mental health, and I think everything that ties, what I've noticed about those periods of recovery, I've fully gotten back on board with those interests in music and art and creativity. Those are things that I bring back into my life when I'm really well, and I think it's really important for us to try and like instill those things as much as possible when we're in a good frame of mind, because you can get a lot of comfort and solace out of the creative arts, and if you find your area in that sort of thing.
Exactly. You can also learn a lot from arts as well,
Yeah.
just about like history and about what cultures value. So if you see their art, you can kind of determine, this culture thought this was significant enough to, make art about it.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's stayed relevant now shows that it was very culturally significant in its day. Because if it wasn't, then it wouldn't, remain now.
It stands the test of time. Yeah.
Exactly. So just to try and get a bit deeper now. So when did your sort of illness start, and how did it develop from going from health to sort of, illness?
Illness. Okay. Yeah. I guess this traces back quite a while now. So I was, I think I was 17, nearly 18 when I first started becoming unwell for the first time. I was at the end of my A-level mock exams. I was diagnosed with chronic fatigue and depression, and I think I spent the first sort of 6 months after that diagnosis mostly restricted to being bedbound. I think the difficult thing about those two conditions is they have a series of overlapping symptoms. So trying to deconstruct in my head where one began and the next one started has always been something I've struggled with. I think even now, with some perspective, I still can't say exactly, but I know one thing for certain, I wasn't well, and many days I couldn't even make it across the room. I'd stand up, I was sort of shaky and incredibly fatigued. It was a bit like having a hangover and the flu, like all the time, just sort of combined together. And it was strange. I think it had a very profound effect on who I was as a person. And you like to say that you're not defined by illness, but I think those on and off for 5 years, my life was characterized by just not being like fully myself. And I think I struggle to come to terms with that. And I think I'm someone who puts a lot of stock in having conversations. I love talking, quite sociable. But I think for a lot of that isolated period, I was almost functionally mute. I didn't really speak anything. Like I didn't have conversations outside of just very functional day-to-day things with my parents, like when's dinner, or like what we're going to do next, or what's on TV, what's the weather like. So nothing outside of that. Which it's amazing how those periods can really transform you as a person, and it almost feels like it strips your identity if you're labeled as ill. But I think, like, having gone through that, which is not something I'd wish on anyone, having gone through that, I think it's completely changed my perception of the things I took for granted beforehand. The beautiful miraculousness of everyday life is something I feel like on a daily basis. I get so much pleasure just out of small things, like being able to walk outside, being able to spend time with my friends, being able to listen to music, all these things now hold so much more wealth and value in my life that I think sometimes it takes a crisis or a point in your life like that to go through to really sort of realize that and come to terms with that.
Definitely.
But it's definitely, I mean, it's been the beginning of a journey as well. Like, I don't think I've finally come to terms with the illness. I've been well for a year and a half now, so hopefully that's behind me. But trying to pick apart that person I used to be, I don't think that's like at the end of the day. I don't think that's super important. I don't need to be the person I used to be. I think I used to worry that having an illness like that would have a lasting effect on you. But I think part of the healing process is coming to terms with the person you are on the other side, really, and how things and staying optimistic. I think that's pretty.
No, definitely.
Pretty
So, how long did the first sort of bout last?
Okay, so I was ill from it was like spring 2016 till the summer, so maybe 6 or 7 months. I got well again. I tried to redo my A levels. And then I was ill for a little bit longer the second time, so I got ill again around the same time of year in the spring of the following year, so 2017, I think. And then I was ill up until Christmas time, and then another year of almost wellness. I don't know. They blur together, and that's the really weird thing about being bedbound and being socially isolated for a long period of time is it might seem like something that would drag on forever, but looking back on it and reflecting on it, it's like that time was compressed. And like for me, it almost feels like 2 weeks of my life have passed and I've come out the other side. I've been spat out the other side and I don't really know what's happened to me in that time. I think a reason for that is maybe the amount of monotony and the lack of diversity in your everyday routine that can make those days bleed together and blur into one. I think it's instilled a sense of it's instilled the importance of variety. Now I think I like to live by the motto, variety is the spice of life. I think it's really important that we break up our day-to-day routine to try and at least signpost time as it passes. Because I know if you do the same thing, like day upon day for months, it really feels like nothing changes or everything remains the same. So yeah, I think... Sorry, what was the question? Going back to, when was the second time I got...
Yeah, so that, I think we'll move on a little bit from that.
Yeah.
And just talk about some of the main lessons you've learned from the illness.
Okay. Main lessons.
Or like just anything you feel like you learned about yourself in that period.
I think the main thing I learned about myself is no matter how lost you might feel in the moment, no matter how much of a disconnect you have in the present time with your previous self or the idealized version of yourself, it's never hopeless, and it's you can always reclaim that sense of identity that you used to have. I think I went through some periods of being incredibly lonely and feeling a little bit adrift, but I know it's a bit of a cliche to say that time is the best medicine, but it has proven true. Like even in those dark moments, you can cling on to some sort of hope that things will change, and they often do, and it can be surprisingly how quick they can change. So I've had some like amazing experiences this last summer. I would say this last summer for me has been the best summer of my life, and I think part of that is obviously being well has been fantastic for me, but also the people I've met and the new friendships I've forged, and a relationship that I've been just starting, and that's a really good thing in my life right now. So I owe a lot to the people around me, and you know who you are because you've had a profound effect on my life. I think you learn the importance to rely and lean on others, and not to face things alone if you've spent a long time being ill, because it isn't something you have to do by yourself, because you're not alone, and there are other people who will, if the help is if you need the help, they will be there. And that doesn't have to be friends or family. If it's not found there's a whole host of professional people who can help you. I think some of the most positive interactions I've had in the past year have actually been with mental health professionals, counselling services. There's only so much praise I can give to these people, but I think they're amazing. I think they can have a vital role in our lives, and I think they can really help you come to terms with yourself and develop as a person. And give you the toolbox you need to cope with everyday problems, things that don't seem like they'll cause a massive impact on your life, but with the right tools and the right strategies, you can treat those everyday obstacles as just minor bumps in the road.
Nice, man. So what would you say in terms of like mental illness or mental health? What the sort of like causes would be, or if there are causes anyway?
I think that's a very difficult question, and I think I'm not an expert in mental health at all. I can only speak to my own about my own experiences and my own personal journey, I guess, in that sector. I think for me, it was very much entwined with illness, but I think it could be a whole host of things. There are a lot of things that can lead you to spiraling sort of thought patterns or anxieties or things, and sometimes it's even you can't even pinpoint them because at the end of the day, it's just an illness like any physical illness. It's something that doesn't necessarily have to have an obvious cause. If you're unwell, you're unwell, and sometimes realizing that that's okay and that's enough, and that you don't have to put the pressure on yourself because it's not like a physical illness, it's a mental illness. Don't think like that. Just think, I'm unwell, I need to get better. How can people help me, or how can I try and help myself? I think there's still an element of stigma attached with mental illness because it doesn't seem the same as visible or physical ailments. I think that could be quite hard to get your head around. You sometimes feel less valid, or valid of the term ill, or valid of the term sick. But I think once people appreciate that it is just another illness, then I think that can only be a good thing, really.
No, exactly, because if you were ill and you like physically ill and you went to the doctors, no one would see any sort of no one would ever question that or go, what, that's not real or anything like that. They just instantly assume, yeah, that's fine. You've got a problem, you're getting help.
Yeah.
But when it's like mental, everyone seems to have this weird view that or maybe you shouldn't get help. Maybe it's not the right thing. Maybe you're just making it up or something.
Yeah, it's really difficult, and I think because every case is so individual and so personal that you have to sort of tailor the treatment to fit the individual and their needs. Whereas if you have a headache, headaches come in lots of different varieties, but often painkillers will get rid of it. But it's not always that simple with mental health. I think you can go through quite weird experiences in the mental health service where you get sort of ping-ponged between different practitioners or different care specialists and given loads of different strategies, some that might seem really patronizing, like writing lists, or for me at least that seemed quite childish, but then some people who just want to talk to you and do talking therapy, and you just open up about things and decompress, and that's something I find was tailor-made to my needs. So yeah, I think when it comes to strategies towards helping with mental health, I think you have to sort of shop around a little bit. Don't think that, okay, if this thing doesn't work for me, nothing will work. There's always a solution out there. It's just it's a matter of looking around, I think.
No, exactly. So just like how would you say, combining obviously the help you got from these sort of professionals, what other things would you say helped you on your road to overcoming the issues you were facing?
There's a whole lot of things. I mean, obviously, I'm going to keep giving a shout out to my friends and family. They've been amazing. But those networks are only as strong as circumstances allow. So during lockdown, we didn't have the luxury of being able to go over to our friends' houses or go for walks with the people that we usually share our time with. So in those situations, I think you have to learn a certain degree of resilience and motivation to be almost like preemptive in your approach. Once I got well, I knew that I had to keep working at it to stay well. I couldn't just be like, oh, I'm done with this, I'm over this. So it's very important to think of it as an ongoing process that you can keep expanding on and improving. I think just like with education, we always have the chance to learn and expand and develop our skills. So yeah, throughout lockdown, I think I was mostly trying to exercise has a massive impact on my mental health, but I also realized that the more I cycled, the more I did running, the more I'd sort of lean on that as a crux to wellness. So sometimes it's about diversifying the things in your life that make you happy, not relying too heavily on one thing, just sort of investing your happiness in lots of different areas, and then hopefully, and given enough time, you can like reap that reward, if that makes sense.
Exactly. So when you first faced the illness, did you feel the people around you at school who you would consider, your friends or people you was around, they was very supportive? Or did you have like a close group of friends who then stuck with you, and the rest of them somehow
Yeah,
spread their wings?
that's a interesting observation. I think it's strange. I think a lot of I would say that I felt quite an active member of the group, of the social group I was in when I first became ill. But I think things like illness can quickly collapse those ties that you thought you had. So I thought I had all these connections and people that were in my life, and sometimes given a crisis like that, people won't always be there. But you do realize quite quickly who your close friends are, and they will be the people who stick around, people who will be with you no matter how well or unwell you are. So yeah, I think we were talking about this the other day, like the issue of popularity and how it can be a seemingly like a hollow state of being, really. Like if you feel like you're a popular person, actually at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, that can be a very superficially fulfilling experience, but not something that has any enduring like benefits to your life. I don't think it might feel very fun and exciting at the time if you feel like you're a popular person, but I think when faced with actually I'm talking in circles now.
When your cards are down, you feel that some people who were initially very positive, and you would consider your friends within this popularity, they're not going to stick around because the bonds between you, because you have so many bonds with so many people, but each bridge is very weak, but you have a lot of bridges, as opposed to having a few really solid sort of
connections. That's a much better way of putting it. Yeah, I think so. I think it's I think the importance of cultivating a very close-knit group of friends can't be stressed enough, because it only takes one person to make a big difference on your life. I don't think you need to have dozens and dozens of those connections. I think if you have just that one voice, or that one person who's rooting for you, that can be more than enough sometimes. And for me, that's been different people at different times. But like, for example, over Christmas, my dad was a huge figure in my life that made the daily grind just sort of manageable and tolerable. We went on so many walks together during lockdown, came closer together than I think we ever have been. That was sort of enough to endure those sort of bitter moments of winter where it's dark, it's miserable weather, you're stuck indoors a lot of the time. And now in like the summer and spring, I had my girlfriend, and she was amazing. She helped me explore North Wales and sort of fall in love with the area that I used to that I grew up in. So yeah, popularity, it's quite a superficial thing, and I think if you look past that and focus on those core critical connections with the people that you love, I think that's something that will prove a lot more rewarding and fulfilling and beneficial for your own health and well-being in the future.
No, exactly, man. So you talked about the concept of having people rooting for you. Yeah. Would you say, like, obviously that can come in different forms, but how significant and how important would you say that is?
Well, I know without the support and the guidance of my parents, I probably never would have made it through this period of illness. I think it's really hard not to, if you face struggles without having someone to share that experience with, or at least someone there to say that they understand and things will be okay. I think that it is pretty critical to have those things. Having someone to root for you, it's difficult. I think I probably speak from a place of privilege. I think I've been very lucky with the connections I've made. I've probably had a very close family, and that's been great. Sometimes it's not a luxury that's afforded to everybody, so it's quite difficult. I don't know. What do you think?
I'd say you really do. I'd say someone rooting for you, that could literally be anyone. It could be a friend, a girlfriend, boyfriend, parental figure. A parental figure who's not your parent, just some sort of adult who you look up to.
Yeah.
And just having someone there to share the victories with, because if you don't share a victory with someone, it doesn't feel as sweet. It's not worth doing if no one knows about it.
Yeah.
But it's like if you heard that thing, it's like if a tree falls in the woods and then no one's around to hear it fall, did it actually fall?
Sure.
But obviously you still have to internalise your victories and failures and go, this is for me, not anyone else. But at the same time, sharing these life events with people who are significant to you is important.
Yeah.
And it does add a lot more value to the thing, and it makes it feel a lot more either sweet, or it kind of like dampens the negative side of it as well.
I think that's really important. As long as you're doing those things for yourself as well, having the balance of people to share things with, the celebrations, the everyday successes, and also making sure that you're expanding on your own sort of potential and helping yourself. I think that's right.
Nice, man. So just going back to I don't know, what is your take on sort of relationships then, either like parental or in sort of a romantic sense?
How do you mean? How would you?
So how important? I'll specify that. How important do you think a good relationship with your parents is? That's a very big question.
Yeah, that is a huge question. That's quite a lot to unpack. I think, like I said before, I can only really speak for my own experiences, and my parents have been an amazing figure in my life. But I don't think that relationship or that closeness has to necessarily be with a parent. It could be with anyone, really. It's always nice to have someone who loves you unconditionally and is there for you. And I think I'm lucky to have that with my parents and also with my partner as well. So I think relationships, I think they're something that make us unique as a species. The way that we are a social people, we come together, we form these connections, and they're some of the more enduring parts of what I think is really special about humanity. I think I'm quite an optimist when it comes to viewing people as a whole. But I think the way that we look out for each other and support each other and guide each other in times of hardship really differentiate us from a lot of things.
No, exactly, man. I do feel as well just talking about sort of the mental health side of it, just the actual importance of self-reflection, because a lot of people, especially in busy lives, a lot of us university students do lead, you kind of run out of time for the important things, and you never sit down and take notes and go, what has happened, what have I learned from it, what can I do better next time? It's sort of like as a reflectionary tool. So something I found that's quite helpful is if you write it like a journal or a gratitude journal. So every day you do like a page and you go, what are the significant events that's occurred today? Also, what can I learn from what's happened today? And then how am I gonna take these lessons and then implement them and then move on?
Yeah, I think that's really a really salient point, especially talking about having the time to reflect. I think that is something that not many of us get. We don't often get that time for self-reflection. I think we're sort of spirited from one moment to the next in our lives, and a lot of the time we feel like we don't have much control over things. So as soon as you're out of school, you're rushed to maybe a job or university, or you feel like you're stuck on a rail sometimes. I think for me, because I've had that time out of the system, and I'm not saying that being ill is necessarily a good thing, but it has given me plenty of time to sit and reflect and try and work on myself. I think everybody has to go to some extent, has to come to terms with who they are as a person and what they're trying to get out of life, and maybe not trying to live up to the expectations that are placed upon them by either society or educational systems like school. I think you just have to follow a life that's authentic and just that, I guess.
So that when you talk about authenticity, that's about trying to find your kind of higher or true self, isn't it? Because a lot of people, they don't really have they obviously start and they operate a lot of their lower self, and this is mainly political talk here through me, studying politics.
Okay.
So they talk a lot about the lower self being giving into short-term pleasure sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then the higher self is like the self-actualized best version of you self you
Okay.
could be. So would you say that authenticity is kind of, understanding yourself warts and all, and then moving on from that?
Yeah, I think that's definitely a good way of putting it. There's a quote that I really like. I think it's by Thoreau. That's the vast majority of people live lives of quiet desperation, and I think that can be quite true if we don't ever come to terms with that warts and all version of yourself. You can feel like you're in a very desperate space. Yeah, I think so. I'd agree.
Nice, man. So for someone who hasn't really self-reflected, or someone who's looking to start getting into, looking into themselves and wants to improve themselves but doesn't know where to start,
Yeah.
what advice would you give to them?
Well, I'd say as with a lot of things, a lot of beneficial habits, you have to start very slowly and very gradually, and you have to be gentle with yourself and take things one step at a time. I think there's a tendency to, when you think there's something good that you can do, is to fully immerse yourself in it and jump in the deep end. But I think that never builds up that sort of strong, rigid foundation. So what you have to do, I think, maybe just take 5 minutes out of a day to have some quiet time to think on what you've done that day, take stock in the things that have happened, think about what's going to happen next. That can then evolve into maybe a form of meditation, or it can, maybe what you do, like the diary journal thing. I've never been a very systematic person. I'm never very good at sticking with one thing, but I like to do a bit of music here and there. I like to do a bit of cooking. I like to go for a cycle ride every now and again. I feel those moments that give me a bit of quiet upstairs in my head, and all those other problems sort of dissolve and fade into the background. If you can find those moments and latch onto them and incorporate that into your sort of routine, I think that can be one way of doing it. But yeah, it is really up to you. I think there's lots of advice out there that I'm sure other people can give better than I can. But I think the main thing is just make that time purely for the one purpose of reflection and sort of meditation and introspection. First, divide up the time, and then the rest will sort of fall into place, I think.
No, exactly. And you bring up a really good point there, which is how to be mindful of doing stuff, because you could drink a tea in a mindful manner.
Yeah.
It applies to such micro tasks and even macro tasks as well.
Yeah.
It's like I could drink a tea, not even taste it, and just wash it down, and have my mind in 4 or 5 different places whilst doing so.
Yeah.
Or you could do it mindfully, which is like you put your hand on the mug, you're actually kind of taking it in and analysing the texture of what you're holding there to sort of
You sort of ground yourself in that moment.
And as you're drinking, you're thinking about all the things you're doing, as opposed to your head being somewhere else, or you being so distracted. And that applies to a lot of the tasks you just referenced, such as like the cooking or the exercise and stuff.
Yeah.
In that moment, the only thing that matters is the task you're doing.
Yeah.
And that goes a little bit back to what Alan Watts says. He talks a lot about like the meaning of life, and just saying how a lot of people get caught up in trying to understand what the meaning of life is, when in reality all it actually is like a dance. Like life is like a dance. And when you're dancing, you're not doing it for any sort of purpose.
Yeah.
You're dancing for the sake of dancing.
Yeah.
And a lot of people they don't actually enjoy the task they're doing. They're like, oh, what's the next thing? What's the next thing?
Yeah.
And even if they're doing the thing they used to look forward to, it's now what's the next thing. And there was a quote that was like, yeah, you're living through the period of your life you used to look forward to, so enjoy it.
I really like that. I think that's really wise. And I think that comes back to what you asked about music earlier. You're asking like, what do you get out of music, or why is it so important to you? It's music as an end. It's not like a be all ends all thing, but it's that experience of celebrating and living through a moment, and having one moment just distilled down to one pure experience and the essence of something is what I find in music. And I think it's like that dance of life. I find the same sort of thing in music, if that makes sense.
Exactly. It's that what I'm doing and the purpose of me doing it is the doing. It's not the sort of ulterior motive. It's
the thing that you take away from it.
The thing you take away from it, or the shirt you get from doing it.
The grander meaning behind something. That's not the important thing. It's the act itself.
So I'm dancing for the purpose of doing it.
Yeah.
And that goes a bit deeper as well, because a lot of people, they see all these tasks, as you said, sort of grander meaning, and they say, oh yeah, if I do this, I'll get that, and if I do this, I'll get that, and if I do this, I'll get that, and then I'll be happy.
Yeah.
It's like, you're going to run out of time, and then you've done all these things in the pursuit of happiness, but not actually enjoyed the act of doing, which is the whole point in doing it, is to be happy. And then another quote with Alan Watts, just plugging Alan Watts today. He talks about like, it's better to have a short life which you enjoy.
Yeah.
Because why go than have a long life and not enjoy it? Because why go on living life that you don't enjoy when you have the choice to have a good life? There's no. Yeah. It's always choice. People think there's like no choice, but there always is a choice.
Yeah. Not that we're advocating having short
No, that's not what we're
flash of
saying.
bad lives.
We're just saying you should choose happiness and you should choose
Yeah.
doing things that you enjoy,
Yes.
as opposed to putting yourself through tasks which you think you will achieve happiness by doing them. You have to enjoy the task itself.
Yeah, don't chase the happiness as an end product. You chase the fulfilling act of just taking part in that thing.
Exactly. And it goes back to this weird guy. I would say weird guy. So I met this guy on a beach, and me and my friends, we used to just walk up to random people on the beach and start speaking to them, because you never know what they're going to say. You never know what sort of like
Beach
value.
people always have those nuggets of wisdom.
No, I know. So we went up to this guy and was like, "Hi, you alright?" And he's like, "Yeah, do I know you?" And I was like, "No." I'm just here to see what you're about. Like, how are you? Like, and then he just starts going, "Yeah, I'm really, really good, thank you. We're just celebrating someone's birthday." And then we went over to the girl whose birthday it was and said, happy birthday.
Yeah.
And then we was just talking to him about his life. And, he was an amputee. And he had a really, really amazing story. And he was just talking about how, despite all of the problems he had in his life, he'd overcome it and been a really successful entrepreneur. And he talked about the way, he's seen lots of successful people. And he was talking about the way the people were successful was they found what they enjoyed, got really good at that one thing, and then just did that. Because a big problem I think that people have is just pursuing money and just seeing that as like the absolute gold standard and just disregarding the actual job or sort of thing they have to do to get it.
Yeah, but I would maybe counter saying that if you disregard money, that might sound like you're coming from a place where money isn't a problem for you.
Exactly.
Whereas a lot of people
we're talking
have
from
to
privilege here.
Exactly.
We're
A lot of
talking
people have
privilege,
to come from a background, from a state where money is important because it's the reality of everyday life, and they're living from that. It's really hard to it's very expensive to not have much money, because, for example, if you're poor and you struggle to, like, if you want to buy a value pack of something, that might be the more financially advisable thing in the long run. But being able to afford a value pack of toilet roll, when actually maybe scratch this one, I can't remember where that was going to go.
Yeah.
There is an example there, but I can't remember.
I think what you're trying to get at there is it's just like, because you don't have many assets or many things, everything costs more. So if you don't have a car, you have to pay more for the bus. If you don't have
That's it.
Wi-Fi, you have to pay more for other stuff. And then there's all these little costs that add up that you wouldn't suffer if you did come from a place of sort of the safety net of wealth or sort of money. So even so talking from this place of privilege, as we both appreciate, if you are lucky enough to have a choice of what job to do, then use that and pursue what you enjoy. And even if you do suffer from the a very finite choice of jobs, still try and seek pleasure and enjoyment in other things. Don't define yourself by the role in which society has given you. Because that is not you. And that's a really important thing. Is a lot of people identify with their thoughts and they think their thoughts are them.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's accurate, because
Exactly.
we don't have much control over our thoughts on a sort of puppet master type level. I think thoughts will drift in and out of your head, and you have to, I guess, maybe understand them and channel them or interpret them. But I don't think you have so much agency over your thoughts that you should internalize them and be defined by them.
Exactly. So that's a really, really good point. And it's just, that's what the practice of mindfulness is. Is noticing the thoughts going in and out of your head, but not identifying with them. It's like imagine you're in like Minecraft creative mode, standing over a train station. If you don't play Minecraft, it's just imagine someone hovering over a train station. And then the trains go in and out of the station, representing your thoughts. And you're not identifying with any particular train because they're just going in and out.
Yeah.
You are not the train. But, if you were standing, in the sort of conductor room, then you'd associate yourself with said train. And you may get on that train and then see where it goes.
Yeah.
And I just realised that links to a train of thought. So let's kind of link to that. Well, hey, look at me.
You're a poet and you don't even know it.
Exactly, mate. Did the rhyme, did the crime. But yeah, so just know that you are not your thoughts, and, the real you is found in the silence.
That is a really nice point. I think I wish I had realised something like that earlier, because I think the time this year I struggled a lot with was like February time, and I was having these very negative spiraling sort of flittering thoughts which would drift in and out. I wouldn't be able to string a coherent train of thought together, and at that point I kind of lost myself a little bit. I thought like, oh, am I always going to be like this? But when I found, that's when I actually started doing the talking therapy and counselling, and within a matter of a couple of months I had managed to talk these problems and I identified them, And it had it proved transformative. I changed as a person, and you, yeah, like you said, you're really not that. The passage of thoughts in your head is just something that's temporary. It's really it's not a permanent state, really.
Exactly. And a way people describe it is like seasons. No season is permanent. It comes in and it comes out and it goes.
Yeah.
But if you were to identify with summer,
yeah,
and you said, "Oh, I bloody hate summer," it's always going to be summer.
Yeah.
And then if you keep saying that to yourself and reaffirming that in your head, because of how the mind works, then you're going to start actually believing that. And that, if you do it enough, that may be internalized and become a core belief. And then when that happens, it becomes a lot harder to sort of break that.
Yeah.
Because it goes back to sort of addiction stuff with the sort of like process the mind goes through in forming habits. So the more you do something, the more reinforced the habit becomes, and then therefore the more hard it is to remove it afterwards because of how reinforced it has been. But if you can understand that you're not your thoughts, and the seasons do come and go, there's going to be good, there's going to be bad, and there's a big concept called alchemy, which is like the sort of chemistry of your body, and it talks about how you have to have bad to appreciate good. So although in the moment bad seems very terrible, and it's not a good thing to go through because you're associating with the emotional state you're currently in, you have to see that there is light at the end of the tunnel. You're not always going to be like that.
Perspective is crucial.
Perspective is crucial, and as a man who's been through it and seen what thought there is no light at the tunnel.
And it's even when I definitely at a few points I probably lost that perspective, and it's not a state you want to ever be in. But I think it's also one that isn't particularly accurate, because I think there is always a bit of hope. And things, speaking from my experience, things can change a lot quicker than you ever expect. I think if I talked to myself 2 years ago and said to myself that I was actually going to be in university and be with a whole group of friends and my life would be back on track, I probably would have just not believed myself. But here I am now, and it's happened. It can. I mean, I might be just one of the lucky people, but I think it can. I think there's always. It's never good to give into those negative trains of thought and go along with that sort of negative momentum. I think you've got to try and pick out those things and try and resist them somewhat.
Exactly, because I've even noticed in myself, like when you start thinking negatively, it's so easy to make it a train of thought and then a spiral. Even the smallest little comment, it can make you go, hang about, is that real? Am I actually like that? Or is this one thing that I attributed to myself that was very positive? Am I actually just kidding myself? I'm actually something else. So it's just really important to know that. I think a good saying about this, I think I've probably referenced before, is like, no matter how much water there is in the ocean, it doesn't sink a ship unless the water breaches the hull of the ship, meaning that people can say whatever they want about you. It doesn't really matter. Fuck them, to be honest. But if you let the water into the hull, or you internalise the negative beliefs, then that's what sinks the ship. So you have to really understand.
I wish I had that level of I guess it's like confidence in myself. I think I'm someone who's definitely my first instinct is to try and be as nice as possible and appease people, and I think that's something I need to learn. I try to identify pitfalls in my own character, but I think definitely trying to make sure that the version of myself I portray to everybody is that nice, compassionate version that I think I am. Is sometimes probably a character flaw that I need to get around a little bit, because I think there is a tendency in some people to try and be nice and virtuous all the time, no matter what, and then they sometimes overlook themselves or they neglect yourself. If you don't look after yourself and make sure that invest in your own health, you can't be around to then look out for other people. I think it's important to that sort of, it's almost like selfishness, where you have to make sure you're well enough to take other people into your life, and you have to love yourself before you can love other people. Sort of
I think that goes back to the concept of when you're on an aircraft, and then they say put your own oxygen mask on before other people. So if you don't help yourself first, you can't help others. So like going back to what you said about loving yourself before you love others, how do you think someone can get to a stage where they can love themselves, especially if they've come from quite a dark place?
like I said, no expert here. I think I've come across that process through a lot of trial and error, and I've made a lot of mistakes. If I could, I can definitely pinpoint the mistakes, the things you should not do, because that's something that I've had a lot of experience with.
So, going back to the question here, if someone is in a dark place mentally, how can they pull themselves out and get to a stage where they can love themselves? How can they begin to do that?
It's a difficult question, and one I'm gonna sort of circumvent a little bit by saying I can speak about the mistakes I've made, and I can tell you exactly what not to do to begin with, at least. So I know for a fact that you shouldn't go inwards and retreat and isolate yourself, and it can be very tempting if you don't feel like you're the version of yourself that you're comfortable with, that you don't want to expose that vulnerability to other people. I think I was also often in the past a little bit resistant to letting people in because I was worried that they might judge me or they might perceive me in a negative light. But if you're ill, if you're genuinely ill, I don't think anyone is ever going to be that critical or that. And then if they are, then why are they in your life? I think the important thing is to let those people in, even if you're in a very low place. It's building that that sort of safety net and casting your net around the people that can help you. I think sometimes for me, actually, when it got really bad, I think I had to rely on people and let them steer the ship a little bit. So if you're in a very bad place, confide in someone, tell them I'm not well, I need some help. Could you help me? Can you help me here? And just making that first step is pretty important. So sometimes my parents have stepped in and they've done things on my behalf that were really helpful and really got me to the place I needed to be. Often if you can outsource to a rational agent who can take authority over things, that can be really, really, really useful. But it doesn't even have to be that severe. It can just be like some of those lessons we were talking about earlier. It's about reflecting, incorporating that into your life, taking some time to, once you've identified that something's not right, at least try and look for the causes or look for some solutions. Being proactive, really. I think the worst thing you can do is ignore it or shut it down or suppress it. And everyone says don't bottle things up, but it really, really is true, because that's how things often progress to being a lot worse. So yeah, sharing is pretty important, I think.
No, and especially coming from a sort of male perspective here, we are quite bad at sharing things.
Yeah.
And everyone thinks, I'm not going to be the one to say anything, especially when you come from sort of hyper-masculine environments. And in that sort of space, it sounds really bad, but it is quite frowned upon to actually express how you feel in them scenarios. That's why you can't rely on them scenarios, and you have to find other outlets, and never because no one around me is saying anything, so I can't say anything. No, that's just a bullshit social construct. You need to talk to people, whoever that is. It doesn't matter who it is. Just find someone who you trust and and speak to them. They'll be like, oh, thank God someone said something. Because everyone's thinking the same bloody thing. Everyone's going through the same problems. Yeah. And if nobody says anything, then it just builds up. But if someone just has the sort of power to go, no, this is a problem, this is something I want to deal with, and if I speak up, I could save someone else's life by doing so. Yeah. Have you seen that thing? Have you seen The Crown? I only know this through The Crown. I have seen The Crown. You know the bit when Diana kisses the kid who has some sort of illness? Yeah. And everyone's like, oh, she kissed the kid with the illness. And everyone's like, it's a massive stigma. I think it was either sort of HIV or something. HIV, yeah. And everyone's like, how's she done that? Because there's such a stigma around HIV at the time. And then, because she knew in the platform she had, that if she did that, she'd basically change the stigma around it. Yeah. And she did through doing that. Yeah. But it just takes one bold person, whether this be on sort of your group of friends, or one friend, you taking that bold step to go, no, it doesn't matter what society's telling me, because society's pretty fucked. We'll just ignore them.
Putting it lightly.
And we'll do our own thing. We'll do the thing that we think's best, because who's someone else to arbitrate my reality? They're not anyone, I'm the one steering this ship, and I'm going to help other people as well. Yeah. But what would your take be on sort of, being the first person to take the leap of faith and sort of go...
I wish people could apply that to the online learning. Please speak up in those lessons. For God's sake, make it fun for the rest of us.
I'll meet you, Mike.
There's nothing worse than being stuck in a room full of 30 strangers and no one saying a thing.
And I was at the cameras on either, so it's just like the lecturer just looks for some random approval from the one kid.
Yeah.
He's got his camera on. Oh,
yeah, there's a lot to be said about people speaking out, and once you've made that barrier for sharing a little bit lower, just that little bit lower, the people will then jump those hurdles and they'll get involved.
It just takes one person, doesn't it, to kind of go, bang, okay, this is okay to speak about now. And I'm quite an open person. I won't really hide anything. But obviously, you've got to get to know people. You can't go, putting your cards on the table with some rando.
Yeah.
You don't know them. You have to build the relationships first.
Yeah.
And some of your friends may not initially tell you what they're going through or how they feel, because them constructs of feeling they can't share things have been building up for so long.
Yeah.
But give them time, maybe sometimes in a comfortable, safe environment, ask them sort of open-ended questions. And everyone says, how are you? But in the UK, this is the thing with a lot of international foreign students, they don't, they haven't come from a place where how are you means, hello.
Yeah.
And they think they're genuinely concerned about your well-being.
It is weird that how are you, we ask it in a way that we don't really expect people to explain how they are. It's just like a social greeting. It's like, how are you? I'm
good, how are
fine.
you? Good, you?
Anything other than that sends up red flags to a lot.
He said he's not okay.
Now what do I do?
What do I do
Stiff
here?
upper lip, employ
But
British sensibilities. It
we
is.
can't speak about emotion. Quiet, you. No more emotion from you anymore. No, it is terrible, isn't it? That needs to change as well.
That does need to change.
You know, because
take those questions. It would be nice if we just took those a little bit more seriously. And if you are not okay, then it's okay to say.
Imagine you're walking down the street. How you doing, mate? You alright? No, I'm not good, mate. And I wish if someone said that, you go, all right, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Not okay, and just move on straight away.
Yeah.
Because you weren't genuine. You didn't actually give one if they were right or not. You just wanted to say hello.
Yeah. Exactly.
But I think people should, and that's what they say a lot, in sort of business meetings when you first meet someone. Only ask how are you if you genuinely care how they are. Because otherwise, one, it's a bit patronising, condescending, and two, it just comes off as wrong. Because why are you asking a question that you don't care about the answer for? You do have people in lectures doing that as well, just to try and show off. They ask a question they know the answer to show off. It's like, well, according to the space-time continuum, what is the square root of 579990? And then the lecturer's like, well, that's a really interesting question, but it's beyond the scope of this lecture.
Yeah,
and
watch
the kid's
this space. I'll get
look
back to
at
you.
me. I just showed him who's boss. Oh man, it's mad, really. Yeah. And I just think, sort of lessons we've got from this is just spend the time to look inside yourself and go, I'm dealing with it myself. Everyone's dealing with it. Everyone's on their own journey.
Yeah.
And some people may be further along this journey. Some people may be less further along the journey.
Yeah.
But just because, another Alan Watts thing here, just because...
I'm gonna have to look this guy up afterwards.
Mate, he's really good. Have a listen. So an acorn is no worse or better than an oak tree just because it's at a lower stage. No one's going, oi, why aren't you an oak tree?
Yeah.
It's because it's on its journey. It just has to have time to evolve. And they're going to grow at different rates. They're not all going to grow the same.
Yeah.
And if they all grew at the same rate, that'd be really boring anyway. So that's the whole point. It's a process, it's a journey, it's a bit of growth. But, the acorn isn't going to become an oak tree unless, a few oak trees give it a bit of advice.
Exactly.
Because you don't know how to do it. It's like, what do I do? What do I do? And it goes back to the thing from Gangster's Paradise in the song. How am I going to learn if no one's here to teach me? Do you know what I mean? So if no one's going to teach you anything, then how are you gonna know what to do?
Dropping these mad esoteric references.
Bang!
Alex.
Esoteric. We've gone from Alan Watts to Gangster's Paradise.
That's quite a leap. I'm loving
That is, mate. That is. But
No, stimulation required. That's just all Alex.
That's
riffing.
it, mate. That's riff. A bit of riffing, mate. Yeah, but we have covered a lot of stuff. And also, would you say? So we did talk a bit there, about how if someone, is a bit of a dick and they don't actually care about you and they're in your life, but they're a negative force.
Yeah.
Would you say fully cut them off? Try and help them? What would you say?
That's something that I'm trying to learn, because I know in university you meet so many new people. You need to learn the tools to, triage people a little bit, and also know when to step out of a relationship or a friendship that's not really working.
Just step back.
Step back, I think. Yeah, it's quite a skill. I think being able to handle, adult relationships where everyone's very scared to tread on each other's feelings, but also at the same time, by not saying anything, they inadvertently upset each other more.
It's just bubbles, isn't it, under the surface?
Yeah. So it is a really difficult thing, and it's something that I'm gonna have to learn. But I think don't stick with a negative force in your life if you know it's not making you happy, and you can identify that, and you've seen those red flags, don't like embrace them.
Exactly, like, you know, if you meet someone, it goes back to the sort of like vibrational energy you're putting out. I know he hates me talking about this. He hates me talking about vibration.
He's someone who likes music. The vibration stuff sometimes loses me, but I'm going to go along with this.
Okay, so we're going on with what I'm saying. So basically, like, when you meet someone and you really get on with them, you can kind of just tell like they're your person, and that's because they're operating on like a similar frequency. Because on an atomic level, nothing's still, everything's vibrating.
I'd like to say, in other words, we just have compatible personalities.
Yes, that is a normal way of saying it. When you are compatible with somebody's personality, then it's good. Basically, yeah, like, you know, you can kind of tell if someone's your type of person, really. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
That, like, you know, you meet them, you go, okay, you're my guy, you're someone I really like, let's continue this, see where it goes.
Yeah.
Or you could meet someone and go, no, don't really want to know, and that's okay as well. Because you're not wasting anyone's time then. Because if you were to be like all happy, yeah, and then they think, yeah, because you've said yeah, and then both of you are like, you know, really under the surface, not actually enjoying the relationship, gaining any value, or actually like each other's company.
I think that's pretty wise.
I
wish I had realised that 5 or 6 years ago, because there are a lot of situations that I've kept going along with because out of, I don't know, some weird sort of social obligation, because you feel like you've gone so far with someone, you want to keep being their friend, only to get like sort of my tail burnt at the end of it or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't think even that's a metaphor, but that's what it felt like. I felt like feeling the consequences of my own actions, sort of thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
What is that called, Alex?
So there's a term in economics called sunk cost theory.
Oh, sunk cost fallacy?
Yeah.
That one, I think I heard of that one.
So it's like you spent so much on something.
Yeah, don't double down on it.
Yeah.
That is what we tend to do. We just double down on those shit.
Like, I've already spent so much, so I need to spend more.
Yeah. If you're in a corrupt, sort of toxic,
sort of shit friendship,
corrupt friendship, then don't double down on that. Just sort of expunge that.
Yeah, exactly. Like, if you've already been burnt, why would you go back into the fire, you know?
Yes.
But it is weird, isn't it, how social constructs like force people into this sort of like, yeah, you know, I've done this so much, you know, everyone else does it, so let's do it again.
Yeah.
And then you keep doing it, and then
breaking that cycle is something that it takes a lot of reflection to learn.
Yes.
Reflection.
And then it goes back to the popularity thing, because you think, oh, well, if I don't hang around with these people, then other people might think I'm less popular. And as we've, you know, debunked throughout this, that is a fallacy in itself. And, you know, you should really just think, who actually cares about me?
There's something called the tyranny of the masses, and going along with what you think is right because everybody has that opinion, but often it's just a strain of an idea that's sort of percolated amongst a group, and it just takes those bold individuals to break that down and realize how at the end of the day it's not like that at all. Yeah,
that is the thing, isn't it? You just gotta be yourself, find who yourself is through, you know,
check yourself before you rickety wreck yourself.
Before you rickety wreck yourself. No, yeah, just you know, try and live authentically. Try and, you know, cultivate a group of friends that you feel best suit your personality and what you want to do.
Get an Archie Saint in your life.
Get an Archie Saint in your life. Shout out to Archie Saint, the horizontal man.
From one horizontal man to another, I can affirm he is one of those people.
Indeed.
But you gotta love him.
Yeah, he'll be having some merch coming out soon, so stay on board for that.
Yeah, keep tuned in to the Lawless podcast.
Love that.
Watch this space.
It's
going places.
So thank you, man. So if you had to take one lesson from your life, the thing I just said to the other guests is, what would you say if you could put a message on a billboard that everyone in the world could see? What would the message say and why?
Oh, what is it with these super difficult questions at the end of the thing? Okay.
It's the final hurdle, mate, to escape.
So the one question that I would. Wait, do it again.
So, question or statement you'd like to put on a billboard that everyone in the world can see?
Well, at the moment, I'm just trying to. I know it's a little bit of a superficial one, but I do still like to live by the variety is the spice of life. And I think there's nothing more important than embracing the diversity and sort of brilliance of everyday life and filling your days with exciting, new, challenging activities that can make mundane situations even feel quite meaningful and quite fulfilling. So yeah, variety is the spice of life. And just like spice, it improves the curry of existence.
Love that. And in the words of the Spice Girls, spice up your life.
There we go.
Love that. So thank you very much, Iori, for coming on today. You've really, really given some wisdom to us.
I don't know if that's true, but thanks.
Man.
It's been
amazing. Like, anyone listening, genuinely, if you do not feel okay, that is fine. Talk to people. Just open a conversation, see where it goes. And like you said, if the first conversation isn't brilliant, it doesn't matter. Speak to someone else. And then you will find someone who you click with and who will help you get out of where you are. And always remember, there is lights. There always is lights. You can even DM me personally if you want. Like, just hit me up. I'm there to speak. I'm there
He's just
to help.
doing that to increase his Instagram follow account.
Yeah, sharp, yeah. It's not about that. Fuck's sake. Right, well, that's a brilliant place to end. I promise I'm a nice person, really. And we'll see you next week. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Goodbye.